The body never lies, because it was never trained to tell the right truth. It was trained to survive. Before a single word is spoken, before a conscious thought even forms, body language is already working as a defense system, scanning, judging, and calculating. From a Machiavellian point of view, this has nothing to do with romance or emotional sensitivity. It's about power. The female body, shaped by centuries of social adaptation, learned how to communicate without exposing itself, how to influence without direct confrontation, how to measure others without declaring anything openly. Every movement is a chess move, and the goal isn't to please, it's to gain advantage. Dark psychology begins when you understand that most signals aren't random. They're strategic reactions to an environment that feels uncertain. The body always watches first. It studies your posture, your tone, your pace, your emotional stability. While you think you're getting to know someone, their body has already judged you as a threat, a resource, or simply a distraction. Machiavelli understood that real power isn't shown openly. It hides behind natural behavior. That's why many gestures look innocent, but exist for one purpose: to trigger a reaction and measure control. A gaze that lingers just 1 second longer than normal, that's not an accident, that's a scan. It tests whether you stay calm under pressure or break and look away. This isn't about instant attraction, it's about hierarchy. The female body uses eye contact like silent radar to identify who controls their inner world and who is controlled by it. If the gaze makes you nervous, the body records that. If you react nervously, the power balance silently shifts. Even the smallest gestures matter: a slight lean forward, a half turn of the body, the angle of the feet. All of it asks one question: do you move with impulse or with intention? The female body does not trust the man who rushes. It prefers the one who observes, the one who doesn't fall apart when signals are unclear. Machiavelli warned that revealing intentions too soon makes you predictable, and predictability is weakness. That's why body language rarely gives the full message. It always leaves a gap, forcing you to guess, to imagine, to reveal yourself. Even stillness is communication. Remaining calm and motionless while someone speaks is not passivity, it is control of the space. The body that doesn't hurry automatically communicates confidence, and confidence is the highest value currency in any power dynamic. Women sense this instinctively. They react differently to a man trying hard to impress than to the man who simply remains grounded. Here is where dark psychology appears. This is not about choosing the most attractive man, it is about choosing the most stable one. The biggest mistake men make is thinking these signals are romantic interest or approval. Often, they are stress tests, small provocations designed to watch your internal reaction. Do you speed up? Do you tense? Do you over-explain? Every micro-reaction reveals your place in the invisible hierarchy. Machiavelli would call this studying the terrain before advancing, because nothing is conquered until it is first understood, and nothing is understood without being tested. This first level of female body language does not seduce. It selects. It doesn't invite. It evaluates. It doesn't promise. It measures. Once you understand this, you stop reading gestures as emotional signals and start seeing them as tactical movements. At this stage, the body is not searching for love. It is searching for security, direction, and control. And inside that silent tension, far more is being decided than most people ever realize. Eye contact is the most misunderstood weapon, because most people interpret it emotionally instead of strategically. It's not about interest or disinterest, it's about controlling the psychological rhythm. Looking is entering someone's space. Looking away is regulating that pressure. The female body masters this dance because it instinctively understands something powerful. Tension is not created by excess, but by controlled doses. Machiavelli knew this. What is given fully loses value. What is rationed creates dependency. So when eye contact lasts just 1 second longer than normal, it's not an open invitation, it's gentle pressure. She's watching to see whether your inner system changes. Do you smile nervously? Do you look away too fast? Do you overtalk to compensate? All of that speaks louder than words. The female body doesn't need to ask questions. Your micro-reactions answer them. Dark psychology begins right here. To provoke without attacking, to measure without exposing yourself. The one who reacts first reveals their position. Breaking eye contact does not always mean submission either. Sometimes it is a strategic retreat designed to create space. And space makes people uncomfortable. The person who cannot tolerate emptiness rushes to fill it with impulsive action. Machiavelli warned that power strengthens when the other person acts out of anxiety. That's why alternation is key. Look, withdraw, look again. Not to seduce, but to create slight psychological imbalance. Not enough to scare, just enough to observe. The common mistake men make is trying to match this game by staring too long without inner grounding. That doesn't show strength, it shows hidden tension, and the female body can detect, with surgical precision, the difference between calmness and stiffness. A steady gaze comes from an emotionally stable nervous system, not from a technique you memorized. If you're holding eye contact because you want a reaction, you've already lost. Power never waits for confirmation. Here we reach a key Machiavellian law. The person who needs the least validation controls the interaction. Eye contact exposes need with brutal honesty. Dilated pupils, rapid blinking, shallow breathing. The female body reads these signals automatically. She may not analyze them consciously. She simply feels something is off balance. And when that happens, the hierarchy silently resets. Eye contact also sets territory, not physical territory, but psychological. When you maintain eye contact without invading and without retreating out of fear, you are making a statement. Not, I want you, but simply, I am here. That difference is huge. The female body reacts very differently to a man who wants something versus a man who is grounded within himself. Machiavelli understood that solid presence intimidates more than declared intention. There is also a subtler level, the sideways glance, a look that never fully turns toward you. It allows observation without direct confrontation. It's used to evaluate without triggering defenses. If you respond by turning your whole body toward her, you expose yourself. If you remain centered, you communicate control. In this silent exchange, the female body adjusts its strategy. If it senses stability, it increases intensity. If it senses desperation, it withdraws or takes control. Eye contact is not searching for emotional connection at this point. It is gathering information. It is asking, is your attention a rare resource or a constant need? Machiavelli would say, the wise ruler observes more than he speaks. The same rule applies here. The one who looks without seeking permission controls the rhythm. The one who chases eye contact submits. Once you understand this, you stop trying to read signals. Instead, you stabilize your internal state. You don't look to get something, you look simply to be present. And when your gaze stops being a tool of desire and becomes an expression of inner authority, the game changes. Her body language no longer tests you as aggressively, because the system recognizes something important. There are no visible cracks to press on. And in the dark psychology of power, that is called respect. The hands, silent weapons. The hands speak when the mouth stays quiet because intention must escape the body somehow. In dark psychology, hands are not decoration. They are tools for emotional regulation and control of attention. Playing with an object, running fingers along a glass or across the wrist, these are not random habits, they are micro-actions with a purpose, to direct your focus, to set rhythm, to provoke reactions without taking open responsibility. Machiavelli understood, the finest influence is the one that does not appear to be influence at all. So when the female body activates the hands, it is like asking silent questions. Do you follow? Do you react? Are you present or dependent? If your attention wanders, the gesture increases. If you stay centered, the gesture changes or stops. None of this is logical or deliberate. It is instinct. The body feels before it thinks. Touching the neck or collarbone, for example, briefly exposes a vulnerable area, but only halfway. It is not surrender. It is controlled invitation. The door opens just enough to see whether you move forward without permission. If you do, you are marked as impulsive. If you don't, the body records self-control. Here we see a classic Machiavellian law. The one who rushes toward opportunity reveals he lacks options, and lack of options always weakens power. Playing with the hair is one of the most misunderstood gestures of all. It's not always nervousness or attraction. Very often, playing with the hair is simply a way to occupy visual space and mark presence. The rhythmic movement keeps your attention anchored, almost hypnotized. If you respond with compliments, fast comments, or obvious approval, her body confirms something important. She can get a reaction from you with almost no effort. From that moment, the dynamic changes. Hands are also emotional distance regulators. When the gesture is slow and visible, It is an invitation to keep watching. When the gesture is quick and fragmented, it is testing your tolerance for ambiguity. Do you become anxious when you don't understand? Do you need to decode it immediately? Do you move just to do something? Every reaction updates her internal map of your stability. Machiavelli would call this knowing your opponent before moving a single piece. Here's the key point most people miss. These gestures usually appear when you aren't giving clear signals, when you don't chase, when you don't validate instantly. The body tries to regain control of the interaction flow. So the hands enter the scene, not to romantically seduce, but to rebalance attention. If you react, the adjustment worked. If you don't, the system switches strategy. The common mistake is responding to every gesture as if it's an invitation. That doesn't show emotional intelligence, it shows reactivity. And in the realm of power, reactivity equals exposure. The female body senses this with brutal clarity, even if it can't explain it logically. It simply feels that something is too open, and in dark psychology, what is open is vulnerable. Machiavelli warned, control is not force, control is consistency. The person who remains calm even under small emotional pressure sends a clear message, I do not need to be guided. When your state no longer shifts because of these gestures, they stop being used as tests. At that point, the game moves to a higher level, because now you're not reacting, you're holding your center. This part of body language isn't meant to create instant desire. It exists as to answer one question. Is your attention stable or easily manipulated? The hands scout the emotional environment like a general sending soldiers ahead before advancing. Once you understand this, you stop interpreting gestures and start observing patterns. And when you observe without reacting, power stops moving away from you and returns to where it belongs, your center. Space, the oldest language of power. Physical distance is one of the oldest expressions of dominance because it cannot be faked with words. The body understands space before it understands meaning. Stepping half a pace closer, leaning slightly forward, invading your personal perimeter, and then stepping back, this is not clumsiness. It is calibration. The female body uses space as a psychological measuring tool, not as an immediate attempt at closeness. Machiavelli would recognize the tactic instantly. Advance to test resistance, retreat to test pursuit. Every change in distance asks silent questions. Do you move forward impulsively, or do you wait? Do you step back from fear, or do you hold your position? The body that rushes forward reveals hunger. The body that retreats reveals insecurity. Neither holds power. She is not drawn to the invader nor to the one who disappears. She reacts to the one who remains centered and grounded. Spatial stability speaks louder than any clever sentence. When distance is reduced slowly, almost imperceptibly, your tolerance for proximity is being tested. If your shoulders tense, your breathing changes, or you move suddenly, her body registers alert, not because closeness is dangerous, but because it reveals inner instability. Machiavelli understood. He who cannot govern his own territory cannot govern anything, and your first territory is your own nervous system. Personal space is the first territory. Stepping back is never accidental. When someone moves closer and then pulls away, they create a psychological vacuum. And the mind hates a vacuum. It demands a response. Most people fall straight into the trap. They lean forward, they talk more, they explain themselves, they try to fix the distance. That reaction is not neutral. It's a mission your subconscious runs automatically. The female body watches closely. Who feels the need to chase back the closeness? And who stays grounded, letting the distance exist without anxiety? Here comes an uncomfortable truth from dark psychology. Whoever tolerates distance controls the rhythm. The one who constantly needs closeness becomes predictable. And predictability, as Machiavelli warned, is strategic weakness. The female body doesn't respond to too much presence. It responds to well-measured presence. Closeness that is not begged for has weight. Closeness that is chased loses value. Even the way you orient your body speaks. Facing someone directly is different from standing at a slight angle. The angle softens confrontation and creates space to observe. If you turn your whole body toward her every time, you communicate exclusive focus, almost dependence. But if part of your body remains open to the room, you're saying, "My world is bigger than this moment." The female body senses this instantly, not as morality, but as a reading of your internal status. Even the way you sit in a chair, lean on a wall, or distribute your weight sends signals. A shrinking body asks for permission. A grounded, relaxed body claims its right to exist, without invading. Machiavelli would say, "A prince does not apologize for existing in his own space." Body language works the same way. The person who feels legitimate does not justify being there. Another common mistake, seeing reduced distance as automatic green light. Many times, it's just a test, an invitation for you to make the first mistake. If you rush forward, you break the balance. If you do nothing, you maintain tension. And unresolved tension is a tool of power. The female body knows. The one who can hold tension without acting has self-control. This entire dynamic reveals something essential. Distance is not managed to get closer. It is managed to observe. Every tiny shift in space is information. Once you understand this, you stop moving to please and start moving from conviction. You don't invade, you don't run, you don't chase. You simply hold your ground. And in the silent Machiavellian logic of power, the one who calmly occupies their space without asking permission redefines the hierarchy. The half smile, the most dangerous signal. The half smile is one of the most sophisticated tools in body language. It lives in ambiguity. It doesn't say yes, it doesn't say no. It leaves the door slightly open. In dark psychology, that is control. A full smile gives approval. It completes the emotional exchange. But a half smile creates emotional debt. Something remains unfinished. Something is unresolved. And what is unresolved keeps the mind engaged. Machiavelli understood. Uncertainty holds attention longer than certainty. When the smile stays on the lips but doesn't reach the eyes, it is not coldness. It is emotional management. Enough is offered to maintain connection, but enough is withheld to keep the advantage. This gesture regulates access. It doesn't say yes, but it doesn't close the door either. It places you in the middle ground, and the mind begins to work overtime. And when the mind works, control shifts. This smile usually appears after you speak, not before. It is a measured response. The body is watching what you do next. Do you seek reassurance? Do you repeat yourself? Do you over-explain? The female body pays more attention to what you do after the smile than to what you said before it. If you rush to complete the smile with words, you break the balance. But if you accept it calmly, without needing resolution, you reveal something rare and powerful: tolerance for ambiguity. And in the silent world of power, that is magnetic. Machiavelli would have called this the control of emotional rhythm. You don't rush, you don't freeze, you modulate. The half smile slows the interaction without stopping it. It's an active pause, a moment where many people expose themselves, because anyone who needs approval instantly looks for clarity. And when you desperately chase clarity, you reveal something dangerous. You depend on the outcome. In terms of power, that's a crack in the armor. There is another version of the smile, the one that flashes briefly and disappears like lightning. It doesn't linger, it doesn't explain itself. This smile serves a different purpose. It signals emotional superiority. It's the body saying, "I see more than I reveal." If you try to match that energy with forced humor or exaggerated expression, your imbalance becomes obvious. The female body registers this immediately: who regulates themselves and who overexposes themselves. The half smile is not meant to please. It is meant to observe. It watches. Do you relax? Do you tense up? Do you speed up? Does your inner state depend on an external signal? Machiavelli insisted that a true ruler is never dragged by other people's reactions. This is the same thing. The one who doesn't need the full smile remains centered. The one who waits for it is already off balance. There is a key detail most people miss. This gesture often appears when you show too much interest. It is a polite break, not rejection, not confrontation, just slowing things down. If you understand this, you don't see it as negative. You recognize it as adjustment. And if you don't react to it, the adjustment loses its purpose. Then the system must switch strategies. The biggest mistake is trying to earn the full smile, because the moment you do that, the interaction becomes an emotional negotiation. Every attempt to win approval drops your status. Machiavelli would say, "The one who begs for favor places himself beneath the one who grants it." The half smile exists exactly to reveal who enters that game. But when you don't respond with anxiety, something interesting happens. The gesture either intensifies or disappears completely. In both cases, the control shifts back to you, because you are no longer reacting, you are maintaining state. And in the dark psychology of power, state control beats every visible signal. This reveals a harsh truth. Most signals are not meant to guide you. They are meant to study you. The half smile is not a message, it is a test. Once you understand that, it loses psychological impact. And once it loses impact, it loses its function. At that moment, the dynamic changes. Power stops moving from their face and returns to your internal stability. The real mastery of body language is not copying gestures or learning tricks. It is neutralizing influence. Dark psychology doesn't reward the one who reacts best. It rewards the one who doesn't need to react at all. And here is where Machiavelli becomes uncomfortable. Real power is not displayed. It exists through lack of need. When you no longer rely on external signals to control your emotional state, the other person's system loses all leverage. And a system without leverage cannot manipulate. Neutralizing does not mean ignoring. It means noticing everything without losing your center. The female body tests because it wants information. If your internal state does not change, the test eventually dies. No conflict, no confrontation, just no feedback. And strategically, that's circuit closure. Influence requires reaction. Without reaction, it dissolves. Machiavelli knew this well. A true ruler does not respond to every stimulus, only to the ones that serve his purpose. The key is congruence. It's not about pretending you don't care, it's about genuinely not needing to care. The body detects the difference. Fake indifference is stiff. Real self-sufficiency is relaxed. Rigidity reveals fear of losing control. Flexibility comes from already having it. When your breathing is steady, your posture natural, and your attention doesn't latch on, the other person's body language changes frequency. And here something decisive happens. The tests become more subtle, or they stop completely. Not because you won, but because you're no longer fertile ground. Dark psychology feeds on micro-anxiety, urgency, insecurity. If there's no urgency, there's no entry point. So the female body adapts. It may intensify to double-check, or withdraw to conserve energy. Either way, you're no longer being pulled by the current. Machiavelli warned against confusing control with performance. If you need to prove dominance, you've already lost it. Neutralizing means allowing the interaction to unfold without attaching your identity to the outcome. You speak when there's something to say. You move when there's reason to move. You approach when there's space to approach. You don't chase signals. You don't correct silences. You don't rush to fill empty space. You let the rhythm reveal itself. Another crucial factor, time. Neutralization works long-term, not inside a single exchange. Most people fail because they want closure now, a clear smile, a direct answer, a guaranteed sign. Machiavelli taught that time is a weapon. The one who can wait, succeeds. The one who cannot wait, submits. When you don't force definition, the other person defines themselves. And what reveals itself without pressure is always more real. Neutralizing also means accepting that not every interaction must advance. Power is not always attracting. Power is never losing yourself. So if the other person's body language retreats, you don't chase. If it intensifies, you don't get excited. You stay centered. That consistency communicates something rare, emotional independence. And emotional independence is the foundation of every invisible hierarchy. At this stage, female body language stops being a mystery and becomes neutral information. It no longer lifts you up nor knocks you down. You read it, you integrate it, you continue. Machiavelli would say, The wise prince neither loves nor hates excessively. He manages. You do the same. You manage your energy, your attention, your presence. And here lies the real ending. When you no longer need to win the game loses power over you. Dark psychology collapses in front of emotional stability because it lives off reaction. No reaction equals no manipulation. And when manipulation is impossible, only two things remain: a clean interaction or none at all. In both cases, you rule. And this is the moment where body language finally stops confusing you and stops testing you. Not because you control it, but because it no longer controls you. And in the purest Machiavellian sense, that is the exact point where power stops moving outside of you and returns to its original source: sovereignty over yourself. There is one last level, quieter, deeper, more decisive, where gestures disappear and only internal states remain. Here, body language stops being a collection of isolated signals and becomes a continuous field of energy. It's no longer about what you do, but about what you can hold. Machiavelli understood this. The most stable power is not forced. It is carried as something natural. At this level, dark psychology no longer operates through obvious tests, but through resonance. The other person's body simply reacts to your inner coherence. Either it aligns with you, or it falls apart in front of you. When your presence is calm and consistent, the female body stops playing games and begins to adjust naturally. Not because it surrendered, but because it recognizes a system that does not need to be pushed. Most tests only exist because there is something to test. When there is no urgency, no anxiety, no need for validation, the game loses its purpose. Machiavelli would have said, "No one conspires against a power that reveals no weaknesses." At this stage, even silence becomes powerful. Not the tense kind, but comfortable silence. Silence without rush. Silence without discomfort. The feminine body feels this instantly. Comfortable silence communicates deep internal authority. It does not demand attention. Attention arrives on its own. And what attracts without effort is very difficult to manipulate. Here we also see a key truth. Interest is not the same as attachment. You can be interested without being trapped. You can observe without being hooked. Dark psychology only works when interest is mixed with emotional dependence. Machiavelli warned, "Attachment clouds judgment," and attachment reveals itself through tiny adjustments, seeking constant synchronization, over-responding, reacting too quickly. When that disappears, the entire reading changes. The female body, unable to predict your reactions, is forced into a choice: reveal itself more honestly or withdraw. Both outcomes are revealing. If she opens up, it's because the environment feels safe. If she withdraws, it's because there is nothing to gain. And in neither case do you lose. Because real power is not keeping the other person close. Real power is not losing yourself in the process. This final level is not about dominating anyone. It is about closing the cycle of influence. You no longer need to interpret every gesture. You no longer respond to every signal. Body language becomes background context, not a command system. Machiavelli taught that a wise ruler minimizes the number of battles he must fight. The same principle applies here. You reduce your reactions to almost zero. And when you reach that point, something subtle reorganizes itself inside the dynamic and inside you, because the ultimate form of power is quiet stability. From here on, interactions become simple. They either flow naturally or they dissolve quietly without friction. Confusion disappears because you're no longer searching for hidden meaning in every movement. You are present, whole, without expectation. And the absence of expectation is one of the highest forms of power. Dark psychology feeds on messy desire, scattered attention, and identities that are constantly negotiating their worth. But when your identity is settled, when you know who you are, there is nothing left to negotiate. The other person's body senses this, even if their mind doesn't understand it. And that perception changes the dynamic more than any tactic ever could. The real ending is not about conquering or convincing or decoding anything. It is simply this: remaining intact. Machiavelli would say it plainly: he who governs himself has no need to govern others. In the world of body language, that becomes a presence that doesn't push, doesn't pull, doesn't chase. It simply is. And in that still grounded presence, dark psychology runs out of stage. So the journey ends, not with a final gesture or a secret signal, but with an internal condition. Once that condition exists, everything else organizes itself naturally. Female body language stops being a mystery and stops being a weapon. It becomes what it always was, a mirror. And what it reflects in the end is not the other person, but your own level of sovereignty. This final phase doesn't add new tricks or reveal hidden gestures because it doesn't need to. It simply shows the logical conclusion. When you understand body language through a Machiavellian lens, you stop believing that interactions are equal emotional exchanges. You realize they were always silent negotiations of power, and most people lose not because they miss the signs, but because they are too emotionally involved. This last level isn't about behavior, it's structural. It defines who you are in any interaction before it even begins. Dark psychology doesn't fail because it's evil. It fails when it runs out of emotional fuel. It survives on uncontrolled impulses, hidden expectations, and the desperate need to be chosen and validated. When those needs no longer control your choices, the system collapses. There is no trick that works on someone who isn't trying to win the trick. Machiavelli was clear. The safest power is the one that never needs to justify itself. At this point, female body language stops acting on you because you are no longer reactive surface. Looks don't lift you up, and they don't intimidate you. Distance doesn't pull you in, and it doesn't push you away. Smiles don't create emotional debt. Everything becomes just information, not instruction. And information only becomes power when you turn it into urgency. Without urgency, there is no domination. Here lies the uncomfortable truth. Most people don't actually want power. They want relief. They want the tension gone. They want clarity. They want guarantees. And that's why they fail every test. Machiavelli warned, "Those who seek immediate peace pay later with dependency." In body language, chasing constant clarity is simply asking for external direction. And the one who asks for direction unknowingly places themselves in a lower position. This final stage is not about winning interactions. It's about leaving them intact, not bending your behavior to force a response, not reshaping your identity around someone else's reactions. And when you do that, something fundamental changes. You stop being moldable, and what cannot be molded cannot be manipulated. It can only be respected or avoided. Both outcomes are strategic victory. Here we also see the difference between attraction and gravity. Attraction is effort. It's chasing, trying, moving towards something. Gravity is in a mass. Others adjust to your presence without you doing anything. Female body language reacts very differently to a man who tries to attract than to a man who simply has inner weight. Machiavelli understood this perfectly. Reputation arrives before action. In the body, presence arrives before gesture. This final level also requires accepting what may look like loss. Not every interaction will continue. Some people will simply disappear when they realize they can't control you. That isn't failure, it's filtering. Real power doesn't try to collect as many connections as possible. Real power protects coherence. It prefers few genuine bonds over many fragile ones, and that selection happens naturally when you stop negotiating your center. The final mistake is trying to pretend all of this. Pretending detachment, acting calm, faking indifference. That's just another form of dependence, only more sophisticated. The female body, and any sharp human system, can sense incongruence immediately. Sovereignty is not performed, it is embodied. Machiavelli would say it bluntly, "The prince who only acts like a prince is eventually exposed." So this conclusion is not an invitation to do more. It is an invitation to stop doing what is unnecessary. Stop reacting, stop over-interpreting, stop searching for constant confirmation. Remain. Observe. Choose only when there is real reason. When your inner structure is firm, every external signal naturally arranges itself around it. And the ending is silent, as all lasting power is. There is no final gesture, no ultimate sign, no dramatic victory, just one clear difference. You are no longer inside the game trying to gain advantage. You are outside it, complete, able to step in or walk away without losing yourself. And in the purest Machiavellian logic, the one who can enter or leave without cost is the one who truly rules. This is how the cycle closes, not with control over others, but with control over yourself. Then female body language, dark psychology, silent tests, all of it loses its edge in front of a presence that cannot be fragmented. What once confused you now reveals truth. What once pressured you now simply informs. And what once dominated you now simply passes by. Because true power does not need to move. It simply is.